Both 1998 and 1999 saw Mika Hakkinen at his prime. In both seasons, a combined 13 race wins, 21 podiums, 20 pole positions, and 958 laps led, and of course, winning the championship for 2 straight seasons. Again, 98 and 99. Hakkinen was on a tear going into the year 2000, the turn of a new millennium. 1998 beats Michael Schumacher by 14 points, and in 1999 beats another Ferrari driver, in Eddie Irvine, by an even closer margin, ahead of the Irishman by 2 points. And obviously finishing ahead of Michael Schumacher for the second year in a row, who possibly, and would have more than likely, most definitely, would have been up there challenging Hakkinen for the title in 1999, had he not got hurt at Silverstone, which I briefly touched on a couple of years ago when I did a video reviewing Eddie Irvine's 1999 season and how close he was to Hakkinen in the 1999 Formula One World Championship race. Now we fast forward to 2000, where Irvine switches teams from Ferrari to Jaguar. Michael Schumacher stays at Ferrari, as I'm sure we all know, and Mika Hakkinen, the main protagonist in this video presentation, I'm sure as we all know, stays at McLaren. If you're liking what you're seeing so far, feel free to hit that red subscribe button to stay up to date with more Formula One content like this on this YouTube page, while simultaneously giving this video a like while you're at it as you're subscribing if you haven't done so already. That is, again, if you're liking what you're seeing so far. Enough of that. Onwards with the 2000 Formula One season, mainly following Mika Hakkinen, and how he came close to winning the title for the 3rd straight year, but in the end, lost. This is the rundown. So to kick things off, race 1 of the 2000 season, located on the streets of Albert Park, Hakkinen started on the front row of the grid from the pole position slot. He had it all under control, creating a gap from the rest, leading for the first 18 laps while in that process, until the engine gave out. His fellow McLaren teammate David Coulthard went out with also an engine fault. So McLaren as a whole got off on the wrong foot, while Ferrari got off on the right foot, as they finished 1-2, with Michael Schumacher taking top honors on the podium with the victory, and Barrichello finishing in second. And we go to Barrichello's home race, which was Brazil, for the following round after Melbourne. Things weren't any better for Hakkinen, or McLaren for that matter. Despite taking pole position on the grid, Hakkinen went out with an oil pressure problem approaching the second half. His teammate David Coulthard made it to the finish, finishing in P2. Originally. I say originally because his McLaren had an illegal technical infringement with the front wing, and was therefore disqualified from the race results. While McLaren walked out of Brazil with nothing, much like Australia, Ferrari picked up the scraps and sealed the deal as Michael Schumacher thundered to the checkered flag, victorious in the Brazilian Grand Prix, extending his lead in the championship table. Fast forward to Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix for the 3rd round in the championship. For the 3rd consecutive Grand Prix, Mika Hakkinen took pole. For once, he and the team had something good come up. In other words, they were back on track. No pun intended. At Hakkinen's expense, he was the one who dominated the San Marino Grand Prix and had set the fastest lap for good measure. In the final round of pit stops, though, that's what it came down to which it was Michael Schumacher that carried more fuel than Hakkinen after they came into the pits simultaneously to begin the second stint. And during that second stint, Hakkinen came into the box first, as Schumacher stayed out longer due to having more fuel on board. And due to the quick work by Ferrari, Schumacher was able to stay ahead of Hakkinen. Hakkinen closed the gap, but it wasn't enough, as Michael Schumacher crossed the finish line in first, winning the San Marino Grand Prix for the 2nd consecutive year, 3rd at the Imola circuit, and the 3rd win in a row in the first 3 races in the 2000 season. Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard for McLaren finished second and third respectively, getting their first points of 2000 underway, but obviously with catching up to do. In the case of Mika Hakkinen, he's down by 24 points at this stage from the lead in the championship table, going into round 4, taking place in the British Grand Prix, located in Silverstone. While it was here in Silverstone, Coulthard sealed the deal and won the British Grand Prix for the second year in a row. Mika Hakkinen finished behind his fellow teammate in second place. More importantly, finishes ahead of Michael Schumacher, who rounds out the podium places, finishing in third behind the two McLarens. Now 22 points down from Schumacher's championship lead and 2 points down from Coulthard, sitting in third place in the standings now, going into round 5, located in Spain in Barcelona. This was the place where Mika Hakkinen had won the last 2 seasons, and furthermore, after winning the Spanish Grand Prix in both 1998 and 1999, Hakkinen went on to win the championship. In 2000, it was the same circumstance. Hakkinen was up front for most of the day, kept it clean while setting the fastest lap for good measure, traded the lead back and forth between pit stops with Michael Schumacher, and eventually, Hakkinen went on to win it for the third year in a row, his first win of the 2000 season. Coulthard's second, ensuring for the second consecutive Grand Prix, McLaren earned the maximum points with a 1-2 result. Michael Schumacher, if wondering, finished 5th, outside of the podium for the first time thus far in the 2000 F1 season. Next up on the calendar, we have the European Grand Prix, center staged at the Nürburgring. In this race, much like Spain, the lead changed back and forth 5 times with Hakkinen and Schumacher. In the closing stages, the final round of pit stops played and proved to be a crucial moment in the race, when Hakkinen lost nearly 4 seconds in the pits to Michael Schumacher. Fast forward a bit with a few laps to go, Michael Schumacher had it all under control, with an extra bonus with backmarkers behind him that Hakkinen had to contend with, which slowed his progress, closing the gap to the Ferrari. In the end, it was Michael Schumacher who ended up victorious in the European Grand Prix, with Mika Hakkinen once again settling for second, and David Coulthard, after a close battle for third with Rubens Barrichello, held on to third place, rounding out the podium. In Monte Carlo, Hakkinen, per usual, had a fast car, but during the latter stages, his car was encountering a sudden loss of power, losing him lots of time and spots. Yet despite this, the Finn kept his head up and pushed through the field, where it's here at Monaco, passing is next to none, and finishing the Monaco Grand Prix in 6th, nabbing a point, was a solid comeback, along the way setting the fastest lap, despite finishing a lap down to his teammate and race winner David Coulthard. And due to Michael Schumacher not finishing the race, just 23 laps short from the finish, this was what McLaren needed to close the gap in the championship. And for the moment, the standings after Monaco read Mika Hakkinen, the main protagonist, in third place, 17 points off the lead. David Coulthard was ahead of Hakkinen, but behind Schumacher by 12 points, going into the next race located in Montreal. And much like Monaco and a few other races to kick off 2000, Mika Hakkinen was the fastest man on the circuit as he set the fastest lap of the race. Again, starting 4th and, well, finished 4th, scoring 3 points in the process. It didn't help, though, that Michael Schumacher was back in his winning form as he led Rubens Barrichello to the line, securing the win, which was so far his 5th of the 2000 season. The next race in the French Grand Prix, a sigh of relief could be heard from the McLaren garage when Michael Schumacher's Ferrari went up in smoke as he had an engine problem, ending his chances of scoring a potential 6 or 4 points, given he was in third place behind the two McLaren drivers in the late stages at the time his engine let go. Speaking of the two McLaren drivers, they had finished the French Grand Prix with a maximum of 16 full house of points. David Coulthard winning, Mika Hakkinen in second. And so far, it was Hakkinen's 5th podium finish of the 2000 season. Austria then, for the next stop on the calendar, and once more, Hakkinen and McLaren's life was a bit easier when disaster struck at Michael Schumacher's expense. First lap, first corner calamity, and Michael Schumacher was among those involved. One of the 3, in fact, that failed to make it through the first corner. Mika Hakkinen, meanwhile, was pretty much for the most part unchallenged. Led 98% of the Austrian Grand Prix, leading all but 2 laps en route to victory. His second in the season so far. In fact, some even doubted Hakkinen would challenge Schumacher and even Coulthard in the 2000 Formula One Championship. But after this win at the formerly known A1 ring, which is nowadays known as the Red Bull ring, the Flying Finn was back with a serious vengeance as far as race wins were concerned, slowly gaining and closing the gap in the championship table with a 2-point gap cushion behind Coulthard, and 8 points gap further behind points leader Michael Schumacher. Then came Hockenheim, which, much like at the A1 ring, Michael Schumacher gets in a tangle and crashes out on the first corner, on the first lap. Other than that, regarding Mika Hakkinen, he was doing his thing up front, and frankly was up at the front all throughout most of the German Grand Prix. That was until Mother Nature said, "Let's make it rain." In response to the rain showers, Hakkinen pitted for the wet tires, 11 laps away from the finish. But in the end, it wasn't enough, as Rubens Barrichello not only stayed out longer and pitted for the wet tires shortly after that, he maintained his lead from Hakkinen, keeping the Finn at bay to finally nab his maiden F1 win. But due to Michael Schumacher once again not finishing in the points, it was now a close game for the championship with 6 more rounds to go. Both McLaren drivers were still behind Schumacher though, but were on equal points going into the next race at the Hungarian Grand Prix. A race in which Mika Hakkinen was in a class of his own, getting by both his teammate and championship rival for position on the opening lap, and from there, Hakkinen pretty much took complete control and would go on to lead all 77 laps en route to the top. Along the way, set the fastest lap. Again, had he got pole, it would have been a so-called Grand Slam, where a driver not only wins the pole position, but goes on to lead every single lap, sets the fastest lap, and of course goes on to win it. That's a so-called Grand Slam award. Again, had Hakkinen took pole, he would have gotten the Grand Slam award. But as a bonus with this win, has the championship lead, but not by much. 2 ahead of Schumacher, 6 ahead of Coulthard. Now we come to Belgium at Spa, where it is here that arguably the overtake of the season from Mika Hakkinen himself took place. And it is here that a good old Hakkinen versus Schumacher classic took place, as it did. But for many, out of the many on-track battles the two have had in their time in Formula One racing, this is it. This is the one race that sticks to minds of many Formula One fans out there, at least from what I've seen, where in the final laps, the two would nip and tuck. Though it was Michael Schumacher with the command, and knowing that the championship was on the line with a few more races left, it was all or nothing as he knew it. And as a result, even risky blocking was the best he could do to keep Hakkinen behind him. Even with that, it was not enough to hold on to the lead, as with 5 laps to go on the run-up to Le Combe, Hakkinen with the toe from not only Schumacher, but the backmarker of Ricardo Zonta, with that extra toe. Got around them both using the inside line as a pick, and made it stick. Remaining on the point the last 4 laps, Hakkinen went on to win it. By no doubt, the main talking point was that remarkable overtake he pulled off in the last 5 laps. It was his 4th win of the 2000 season, his first at the Spa-Francorchamps racing facility, and furthermore, increases the gap in the lead in the championship table. Considering Michael Schumacher held on to second place, the gap isn't by much. Hakkinen was ahead of the German by 2 points going into the Belgian Grand Prix, and at the conclusion of the Belgian Grand Prix, the gap was 6 points going into the next round. In Monza, Mika Hakkinen finished runner-up to Michael on Ferrari territory, as Schumacher in his blood-red Ferrari won on Ferrari territory. Now, the gap between Hakkinen and Schumacher in the standings was back to 2 points, with Hakkinen still in front though. Indianapolis was the next stop, where things went downhill unfortunately in the case of Mika Hakkinen. He was on course to score a possible 6 points in the bag whilst on the charge chasing down Michael Schumacher, but during that chase it would prove costly as his engine blew up. Therefore, forced to park up and retire. It didn't help Schumacher held on to his lead and ends up winning. And this means, with the result of Schumacher back on top and Hakkinen failing to finish in the points, with again following a blown engine, Schumacher is back on top in the championship table, leading the way by a margin of 8 points going into the penultimate round, which was located in Suzuka. Now, if Hakkinen was to have any chance to still be in this, he had to win the Japanese Grand Prix. That, or hope Schumacher finishes 6th or lower to withstand any chance at the title. A win for Michael Schumacher in Japan, regardless of where Hakkinen finishes, even with second place, it would not be good enough to stay in the hunt, and he knew it. Come Japan in Suzuka, Hakkinen had the better start than Schumacher and led the charge, leading the most laps in the process and furthermore set the benchmark with the fastest lap. Yet again, it wouldn't be until the last round of pit stops though. That right there was where the championship was decided. In other words, Hakkinen came in for service to pit while Schumacher stayed out longer. Shortly after, a few laps after Hakkinen's final stop, Schumacher came in for his final stop. He was able to create a gap to the point where, when he emerged back onto the racetrack, he kept and maintained the race lead. In the end, Michael Schumacher was victorious, which at that very moment when Schumacher crossed the line in first at the end of the Japanese Grand Prix, it was official. And he was, for the 3rd time in his career and the first time in Ferrari colors, was the Formula One World Champion. For Hakkinen, it was officially over as far as the Drivers' Championship was concerned. Even second place wasn't good enough. Even though it was over in the Drivers' Championship, the Constructors was still on. McLaren still had a chance to win their first Constructors title in 2 years. Even with that, the Constructors were lost as well. In the final race of the year in Malaysia, it was a Ferrari 1-3, which, you guessed it, Michael Schumacher coming out on top with Rubens Barrichello in 3rd place, and Coulthard being the meat in the Ferrari sandwich with 2nd place. Mika Hakkinen, despite setting the fastest lap of the race yet again, had failed to make the podium in the last race of the 2000 season, and possibly could have made the podium had he not jumped the start and got a 10-second stop-go penalty as a result. But still, he was still satisfied with 4th, adding in 3 points to his 2000 resume. 2nd place in the Drivers' Championship for Hakkinen, 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship for McLaren. Hakkinen lost out by a 19-point margin, while McLaren in the Constructors' table lost out by 18 points. Hakkinen lost, but even then congratulated Schumacher, flashing back to Japan, showing how much humbleness and class act of a driver Hakkinen is not only on the track, but off as well. The 2000 season was, by the way, the last time Mika Hakkinen was in championship contention and was a championship challenger, as the following year in 2001, it was a massive downgrade and retired from Formula One entirely after the 2001 season concluded. But regarding the Flying Finn's 2000 season, his stats look like this: 4 wins, 11 podiums, 8 front row starts, in which 5 of them were from the pole position slot, clocking in the most fastest laps with 9, leading for 355 laps, along with an average start of a 2.5 and an average finish rate of 4.8, along with 3 did not finishes. Consistency is key in Formula One and any form of motorsport in sports as a whole period, but in this case, Hakkinen's consistency wasn't enough to retain his crown, and being denied a hat trick of championships by Ferrari's Michael Schumacher, who, by the way, was his challenger also during their early days of racing in go-karts, and even during those days were battling for race wins, podiums, and championships. Again, even during the karting days. Some things never change. But, of course, as we all know, Hakkinen entered the 2000 season as the Formula One champion of 98 and 99, as by the end of the 2000 season, chances of winning 3 in a row was changed and denied by Michael Schumacher, forcing Hakkinen to wait another day, which that day of winning another Formula One World Championship never came and never happened again, as again, following his bad 2001 season, was nowhere near Michael Schumacher's level, and left Formula One as a driver at the end of the 2001 season, and that was that. But in regards to 2000, it makes people wonder, what if Hakkinen never had that engine problem at Indy? What if he was able to get around and past Michael Schumacher in Japan? In that same scenario, had Hakkinen did manage to get past Schumacher for the win in Japan, what if he never jumped the start in Malaysia? What if, in the year 2000, the turn of the new millennium, the dawn of a new millennium, Mika Hakkinen, the Flying Finn, captured his missing ring?